in the Georgia election interference case. The move came as it became clear that former President Donald Trump and 18 other defendants will be required to pay cash upon being booked in Atlanta this week. While defendants have to come up with only 10% of the bail amount, even that could prove difficult for some, including Rudolph Giuliani, the former personal lawyer for Trump, who is running out of money because of an array of legal entanglements and mounting legal bills. Now, with this bail, this consent bail, Trump is not allowed to communicate with witnesses or co-defendants about the case, except through his lawyers. And he is also barred from intimidating witnesses or co-defendants. He's forbidden from making any direct or indirect threat of any nature against the community or to any property in the community, including in posts on social media or reposts of posts by others on social media. Hurricane Hilary made landfall on Mexico's Baja California coast yesterday, causing floods and mudslides. In California, rain and wind in Los Angeles toppled trees, downed power lines, and closed roads. The storm is an extraordinarily rare event for California, and scientists are still trying to figure out whether it is influenced by human-made climate change. Also, if you were in Los Angeles yesterday, you probably felt an earthquake. Unrelated to the tropical storm, there was a 5.0 earthquake that struck northwest of LA yesterday afternoon. Fortunately, no damage or injuries were reported. Once a force in Harlem, the oldest Black church in New York is barely hanging on. In the 227 years since its birth, Mother African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, the oldest Black church in the state of New York, has served as a spot on the Underground Railroad, a haven for Black artists and intellectuals during the Harlem Renaissance, and an amphitheater for civil rights activism during the 1950s and 60s. But an aging congregation base, deferred maintenance, insufficient funding, and a rapidly gentrifying Harlem threatened to capsize the church in the face of mounting financial distress. In towns and cities across the country, police unions have been asking for pay bumps for body cameras, seeking to capitalize on the growing public expectation that every encounter with the police will be recorded. Police unions argue that a pay bump compensates them for the added responsibility and loss of privacy that comes from wearing body cameras. Now, such deals or requests for pay increases do not sit well with the public. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his presidential campaign over the weekend attempted to clarify comments he made to a reporter when he said that Republicans cannot be, quote, listless vessels, quote. Over the weekend, Trump supporters seized on the words and compared them to Hillary Clinton's 2016 critique of some of Trump's supporters when she said during a fundraising speech that they could be put in a basket of deplorables. As Trump plans to skip the first Republican debate this week, his rivals plot to seize the spotlight. Now, advisors to several of his opponents say that their debate preparation has to encompass two scenarios: how to capitalize on Trump's absence, and, knowing Donald Trump, how to deal with a last-minute appearance. And prominent conservative legal scholars are increasingly raising a constitutional argument that 2024 Republican candidate Donald Trump should be barred from the presidency because of his actions to overturn the previous presidential election results. Liberal former Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe and J. Michael Luddick, the former federal appellate judge and prominent conservative, both are in agreement and argue the 14th Amendment disqualifies the former president from returning to the Oval Office. Now, this theory has not been tested in the court system. This is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I'm joined by two superstar contributors, Alan Orr, he's the founder of Orr Immigration Law Firm, and Dr. Tyrone Howard, he's a professor of education at UCLA, and he is the host of KBLA's You Must Learn every Saturday at 10 a.m. and Sundays at 12 noon right here on KBLA. And In hour two today, we are going deep and we're digging behind some of the biggest headlines and some of the biggest stories. Today, we're tracking legal headlines from African-American celebrities and influencers, from a revived lawsuit against Michael Jackson's companies that he owned for sexual assault, to Cardi B's request to a court to make Tasha K pay her almost $4 million as a result of a successful defamation lawsuit. Now, Tasha claims that she is broke and is on the verge of filing bankruptcy. What will this mean for Cardi B's efforts to try to collect? We're going to go deep on some of the stories of Black celebrities and the legal system, stories that have folks talking. Alan Orr, attorney extraordinaire, is going to stick around for hour two and help you make sense of these legal stories. But before I bring on my guest, here's what I'm thinking in real time. I want to give a great big shout out and happy birthday to Elizabeth Francis, aka Queen Elizabeth of Houston. This queen celebrated her 114th, yes, you heard me, 114th birthday. Now, see, not many 94-year-olds still have their mothers around, but Dorothy Williams does. Her mom is Elizabeth Francis, and Dorothy and Elizabeth lived together in Houston. And as I said, Elizabeth has just turned 114 years old. Now, not only is there Mom Elizabeth, or Queen Elizabeth, and her 94-year-old daughter, Dorothy, there's a granddaughter named Ethel Harrison, and Ethel is 68 years old. I'm just loving all these Black women living their best lives well beyond the ages where most people think about retiring and even dying. Now, Ethel is the party planner in the family, so she threw the 114th birthday party for her grandmother, Frances. And this party included a catered spaghetti meal and vanilla and chocolate, a sheet cake, and dozens of Queen Elizabeth's favorite flowers and a plaque confirming that she is indeed the oldest living person in Texas. Queen Elizabeth, as she is affectionately known, her granddaughter, Ethel, says that Miss Francis, Queen Francis, is believed to be the second oldest living person in the United States and the seventh oldest living person in the entire world. She is obviously a part of a very small and very exclusive group. Her granddaughter, Queen Francis's granddaughter, says that she's been having these parties for her grandmother and surprising everyone ever since Queen Francis turned 106. So they have been partying for almost a decade. Elizabeth Francis was born in Louisiana in 1909. Now, this was so long ago that even Queen Elizabeth says she doesn't remember the name of the town where she was born. She knows that it was Louisiana, but she can't quite remember the name of the town. Her mother died when she was a girl, and she and her 5 siblings were sent to different homes. Elizabeth went to Houston, where she was ultimately raised by an aunt. But for years, get this, Elizabeth lived next door to her sister, who lived to be 106 years old. Elizabeth and her sister were extremely close and shared lots of family memories together. Queen Francis, she says she's always lived a pretty simple life. She says the secret to her longevity has been going to bed early, getting up early, working hard, and then coming home and making nutritious meals and spending time with her family. This is the piece of advice that I really love that Queen Francis, Miss Francis, 114-year-old queen, likes to give to others. Queen Francis says, "Speak your mind and don't hold your tongue." And she frequently says, if the Lord gave it to you, then you better use it. And I say amen to that. And again, congratulations on 114. Her granddaughter, Dorothy, says she's already planning for the 115th birthday celebration for her grandmother. I just wish that everyone can be as fortunate as not only Miss Frances, but her sister, who lived to be 106, and her daughter, that is 94, and her granddaughter, that is 68 years old. If you get a chance, look this story up on the internet and look at what a 114-year-old Black woman looks like. You are going to be shocked. I didn't think the woman was a day over 80. She looks absolutely amazing, and so does the rest of her family members. So again, big shout out to Queen Frances on her birthday. When we come forward, more of today's trending news with my expert contributors right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Gotta stay fresh, ma. House shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search. We are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
We are back, and it is a busy Monday and a busy news day, from hurricanes in California to the first former president of the United States having to make bail. What do you make of all of this news? Joining me to help us break it all down today is Alan Orr. He is one of our regular contributors and is an immigration attorney, and Dr. Tyrone Howard, also a regular contributor and host right here on KBLA of You Must Learn. Both are joining me today. All right, Alan, I'm going to start with you. You are my legal mind for today. There's a colloquial saying that things just got really real. Is that what happened today when bail was set for a former U.S. president?
Well, I think that happened when the indictment actually came down, but I think it got even more real for him today when we started talking about money. But, I think, and the other people indicted and them not having anyone covering their legal fees anymore. So, Georgia has always been the place of the civil rights movement, and it might be the place that sort of changes the way we think about presidents.
I guess one of the things that we can't gloss over this, Professor Howard, is the admonition that the judge had to give to Donald Trump. Now, this wasn't a mob boss. This wasn't the leader of a white supremacy organized group. This wasn't a member of a street gang. This is a man who was elected president of the United States in 2016, and then who got 70 million plus votes in 2020, who's leading the Republican Party for the nomination for 2024. But he gives this man, this person, this admonition about not intimidating witnesses, not making threats against the community or any property in the community. I'm just scratching my head thinking, how did we get here that a former president, someone who is held, you would think, to some of the highest ethical standards in the nation, is being admonished like he is a street gang leader or some kind of mafia boss?
Yeah, to Alan's point, we have officially entered the twilight zone. And as the twilight zone continues to unfold, we will see more things that we thought we would never see. You're right, Areva, the fact that he's being told not to intimidate witnesses, not to talk to his co-defendants, not to use social media to convey veiled messages about what he will do or what he thinks. It's all surreal. But here's the thing. I think in many ways, the worst is still yet to come. I think that as we get closer and closer to a trial, I think we'll see more Trump antics. I think the judge will have to be prepared to do more slapping on the wrist, more gag orders, more shutting down, all the things that Donald Trump is known to do to try to create a narrative that he is the victim, that he's being wronged, or that he is somehow being treated unfair and unjust. And to me, there's a certain kind of poetic justice to all this, because for years we know that the court system, the legal system in this country has not served Black people and brown people and poor people in a just and sort of the thoughtful fashion. And to see someone who was once the most powerful person on the planet to now have to be admonished in this way, it kind of shows you, that this thing called justice on occasion can possibly work both ways.
Yeah, it really is a sense of poetic justice that you have someone who has intimidated people and harassed people, been the most disrespectful president that I think this country has ever seen, for him now to be given an admonishment about how to conduct himself as if he is a child, as if he is some kind of incorrigible person. These instructions are so specific and so direct. It's really mind-boggling. And Alan, he's not getting any special, I'm the ex-president, let me slip through the back door. The county sheriff in Fulton County said everybody that's indicted comes through his county jail. They're going to be fingerprinted and mug shots are going to be taken. And we haven't seen bail set in any of these other cases. So this is a pretty significant, I would say an incredibly significant legal development.
So I would say sit back and get ready for television this week, because that's what we're about to have in Georgia, because all of them have to turn themselves in by Friday. There's also a Republican debate happening, and the president is already on his way to Hawaii. And the one thing that the Trump administration, Trump phenom likes, is air in the room. And he's going to be looking for a way to sort of use that to his advantage. The other thing that I think we saw in Fulton County is just how Black Fulton County was. I think almost everybody in that room except the judge was Black. So you saw Black shelf, Black clerk, Black people walking around. And something is poetic also about that kind of justice from the people that he attacked the most, always calling them the lesser or doing something, or this person's a racist or that person's a racist, sort of bringing him to justice and holding him to toe, under that arena. I think it's really important to watch. The part that sort of is going to be alarming to him is when you see him standing next to a Black police officer, sort of checking him in or taking his fingerprints or doing his pictures. That's going to be the really shocking moment for America.
Yeah. And, I think this judge obviously made the statement about threats or, direct or indirect against the community or property in the community, because we saw when he left that DC courthouse, he stopped and gave that press conference and he slammed DC, for as being dirty and graffiti everywhere. So I think this judge was already anticipating him, making his dog whistle racist statements about Atlanta for the very reason you just identified, because of the large number of African Americans that live there and that are also involved in the justice system there. So yeah, he is going to be in for.
But I think lawyer, what did he do immediately after that? He said he was going to have a hearing on this Monday. He was going to have a press conference on this Monday. Then his lawyer stepped in and said, "Idiot, fool, not today, not this one. Don't try me," right? Because he said he was going to bring out all the evidence. And then he had to step it back and say, no, I'm going to put the evidence in the courtroom. And everybody was like, oh, okay. So that shows you that he's walking a tighter rope. I don't think that he can hold himself. They really need to keep him away from a microphone, or he just might find himself behind bars before even then.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, too. He's supposed to hold this big press conference and show us all of this evidence that would exonerate him and show us how all these charges are just, bogus. And he had evidence to refute all the charges. And yes, he is for this moment listening to his attorneys. But I agree with you. It's not likely that will continue. Irony, lots of irony in that. And there's a lot of irony in this, too, Professor Howard. This is Ron DeSantis. Remember all the flack Hillary Clinton got when she made that comment about deplorables in reference to some of Donald Trump's supporters during the 2016 election, or campaign at least. Now we have Ron DeSantis calling Republicans that won't support him. Basically, he was saying, you idiots, you fools, and called them listless vessels. For those folks who may not know what a listless vessel is, let's make sure everybody understands the 5th grade definition, Professor Howard, of a listless vessel.
Listless vessel. You are empty-minded. There is no dare there. There is no substance whatsoever. There is nothing of redeeming value if you're a listless vessel. And I think that's what DeSantis is trying to do. I think DeSantis's play is really tied into what we just talked about. I think he's lying in wait, hoping, thinking, wondering. If Trump goes to jail, if Trump is found guilty of any of these 4 indictments, then he is right there sitting in all likelihood as your Republican frontrunner, if you will. So I think he's got to learn how to just kind of not poke the bear too much, because I was surprised he made this comment, but he has to show enough gravitas, if you will, to show that he's got enough backbone so that in the event that Trump falls off and is no longer in this race, he's really, positioned to be the person who will go up against Biden. And a lot of the polls that I've seen, Areva, have shown that he and Biden would be somewhat neck to neck, and some even have him as being slightly more advantaged than Biden would be. So it's interesting to see what's happening here. I think he's going to try to walk those words back, because he knows those Trump supporters are out there, and if they think that he's coming after them, they will turn on him in a heartbeat. So he has to be careful.
Yeah, the Trump supporters already seized on those words, comparing them to the Hillary Clinton's, basket of deplorables. And for anybody that didn't still quite get the professorial definition of listless vessel by Dr. Howard, basically he's calling them dumb. That's plain and simple. Everybody gets that. And he's frustrated. He's frustrated because he doesn't understand how come he's not drawing more of the MAGA base. He's doing all the MAGA-esque type things, but his poll numbers aren't moving a great deal. So when you can't cause people to support you for your message and your record, then you attack them. So that's what he's doing. He's calling them dumb for not seeing that he is the guy that they should be supporting. All of these candidates are going to have a problem come Wednesday night, Alan, if Donald Trump does what he says he's going to do, which is counter-programming, give an interview to the former Fox News host Tucker Carlson rather than show up at that debate. We know that we saw some leaked memos about what Ron DeSantis was supposed to do in Trump's absence, and that was to support him. He walked that back. This guy spends a whole lot of time walking back stuff. So after that memo was leaked, because Chris Christie, I think, had the best line. He says, wait a minute, if you're going to spend your time supporting Donald Trump, why don't you drop out of the race and endorse Donald Trump? if you're in a race to win it, you are not publicly and openly encouraging voters to vote for your opposition. So, of course, Ron DeSantis walked that back and said, oh, no, he's going to, go after Donald Trump. But what are you expecting, Alan? This is going to be interesting because if Trump isn't there, are you going to see these guys literally stepping over each other to show who can be the most supportive of Donald Trump?
Yeah, and actually, for me, from where I sit as a Democrat, that's good because when Trump goes down, they all go down as supporting him. King Cuccinelli spent the whole weekend on TV trying to do the cleanup between someone saying the listless vessels and saying that it was separated from the conversation he was trying to have. But as I say again, anyone who likes Ron DeSantis has not met him or seen his record in Florida. I mean, that's just a truism. He is not he's smart, but he's just not normal in the way by people. His interaction with kids and families, and he's just robotic in some ways. So I just don't think he really makes a good national candidate. Then you have Asa Hutchinson, who now has decided that he's going to be against Trump. Will Hurd, who's always been against Trump. So I just think it's really interesting to see what the dynamics of the stage will be and what the drama will be of how many people are bootlicking and how many people are saying it's time to move away, because that's the future of the Republican Party.
Yeah, one thing too, Dr. Howard, about DeSantis, yes, he's laying in the wait, hoping that something happens with Donald Trump. I don't know what that is, because we already know the majority of his base says they're going to support him despite indictment, despite even if he is convicted, and even if he is incarcerated, he has a solid base. I think if Ron DeSantis somehow, miraculously beats Donald Trump will spend his entire, the remaining part of his life trying to take DeSantis down. I think it would be such a bloodbath. Donald Trump is not going to be a good Republican. He won't sign the pledge that says he will support whoever is nominated for the party. He refuses to sign that pledge. He's not going to sign that. And I think he would become the best opponent to Ron DeSantis. We wouldn't have to do much as Democrats, but sit back and let Donald Trump take DeSantis down, because his ego could not allow that to happen. When we come forward, we want to talk about these police union members who believe they should get a pay raise for wearing body cameras, and the financial problems of New York's oldest Black African Methodist Episcopal Church. All of that and more when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580. Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere putting more variety and more diversity on the air than KBLA Talk 1580, we sure would like to hear about your discovery.
You got to have vision.
You can search, but we are confident that you won't find more shows covering more topics, hosted by a more diverse and inclusive lineup of talkers than the squad we have assembled here at KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the time, brothers. This is the time.
We've got something for everybody.
That's right.
Health and healing, history and humor, issues and events, empowerment and entertainment, all in one station.
What's really going on?
Free enterprise, you dig?
KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes.
Oh yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
King Kong ain't got on me.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580. You're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
I'm young, gifted, and black.
KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram at KBLA 1580.
Follow the leader.
Are you ready?
The station leading the way with exclusive interviews,
Follow the leader.
stimulating conversation, and intellectual discourse that empowers, enlightens, and informs.
Follow the leader.
Follow the leader at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Keep following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a red spot. Shot with a red spot. Shot with a red spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in...
We are back, and in this hour, I'm joined by Professor Tyrone Howard at UCLA and host of KBLA's You Must Learn right here on Saturdays at 10 a.m. and Sundays at 12 noon, and immigration attorney and founder of Orr Immigration Law Firm, Alan Orr. In hour two, we're going to be talking about the biggest legal headlines involving some of your favorite celebrities and influencers. So make sure you stick around for hour two. Professor Howard, I was really saddened by this news report about Mother African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church in Harlem. This church has been around, hundreds of years. It was a part of one of the stops of the Underground Railroad. It was a haven during the Harlem Renaissance for artists and intellectuals, and haven for civil rights activists in the 1950s and 60s. But it, like many Black churches that were in predominantly Black neighborhoods that have suffered from, shifts in population, from gentrification, is falling on real hard times financially. Are there other examples that you are aware of like this? And what do you see as the future for churches that have so much history like this in terms of, how are they going to make it financially?
Yeah, this is a glimpse into something I think that, unfortunately, to your point, Areva, may be happening to many churches across the country. This is a church that has 227 years it's been in existence. It was a stop along the Underground Railroad, as you mentioned. But I think we have to look at the root causes, and you touched upon them. We've got an aging congregation, and not only at Mother Zion, but in other churches across the country. You've got gentrification. You also have a growing number of people who are just not churchgoers, which I think is a part of this as well. And then you had a number of churches who were really impacted by the pandemic, where church going just dropped dramatically when churches started to do their services, via live stream. So I think this is a sign of things to come. The churches that were once the anchor of our communities will begin to see a different reality. And, we saw that there was a $200,000 infusion of cash that just happened a couple of years ago, but it still hasn't helped. And this is unfortunate because this is a cultural landmark. This is a historical landmark. This is a Black landmark that we have to do everything we can to make sure that it doesn't go by the wayside. But the circumstances around it and other churches across this country, Black churches that is, are going to be looking at some very difficult times.
And so, again, you said cultural icon, a pillar of the Black community. The Black church has always been that. What happens if we don't provide the financial support? And the $200,000 was good, but I'm thinking, oh my God, that's not going to go very far in New York. So what happens if we start to lose these cultural institutions in our community? Does it impact the education of our kids? And, does it impact our political organizing? What do you think the loss? Obviously, we lose a historical, monument of sorts, but I think it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, it is, because in many ways, as you said, historically, churches have been the anchor of our communities along with schools, right? But I think what we also have to face is this real uncomfortable reality, is that churches have begun to play a different role in our quest for justice in years past. I think the advent of social media has shown that folks are able to gather people in the virtual realm in a very different way. I think people are able to use social media to connect in different ways. So I think in lots of ways, we're seeing a significant shift in how people mobilize, how people worship, how people connect, how they network. And I'm not saying that the church didn't adapt to those times, but I think the actual physical place that we once came to looks very different now in lots of ways.
So we may, Alan, start walking through Black neighborhoods, and these churches might be new condos. They may be retail shopping centers or apartment buildings, because if what Professor Howard is saying is true, it doesn't mean we're not connecting, but we're connecting online. And this building that maybe used to house 10,000 people on a busy Sunday, I know some of these churches are virtually empty.
So I think this is distinguishable in that we've already seen churches turn into nightclubs and restaurants, and it's sort of a fad thing to go to and hang out and what have you. The construction of this church by a Black architect sort of distinguishes it from just any old church, as well as the underground stopping. It makes it a historical site. And so then we sort of ask ourselves, is it really being priced out, or does somebody want that land? And I think Black people, Black churches need to be aware of that. That's generally what it comes down to. Someone sees that as a valuable place to invest in their life. And that's what happened to I used to live on U Street, DC. And when I first moved there, you would never, ever see someone who was not Black. And now you would have to drive 5 blocks to find someone who is Black in that community. So even people who had churches there, they moved out to Maryland or further places where there's no transportation, bought these big buildings, leveraged these big buildings, and now they can't keep them. So, that is the market, and maybe that needs to change. But I think the same thing talks about returning to the office after work. We need to re-envision the way we see our cities and why we have so many unhoused people and how we use that space differently. But also, we need to treasure Black parts of America so that they're invested. And $200,000 is a drop in the hat. And don't tell me we don't have the money between New York and the United States for a 227-year-old church with the history that it has, linked to the Renaissance, and everybody who attended there. I've been to that church. So spare me that there's no money, because there is money, because that's a choice.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because, yes, this gentrification, which we see happening in big cities, all big and small cities all over the country, we do need to be mindful because we could end up in, a decade or so, or maybe even sooner, with these kinds of institutions, as you said, now bulldozed into some plain vanilla housing complex or apartment complex, rather than, preserving our history. And at a time when our history is under attack in so many different ways across this country, making sure that we're doing everything we can to preserve it. And you're right, there are a lot of wealthy Black folks in New York. So I sent this article to a couple of those folks that I happen to know who are friends of mine to see, like, okay, what y'all doing in New York? Don't let this church go. So I think we all have a responsibility to make sure we're getting the word out. If we know folks, you don't have to be in New York, obviously, to invest in this property, but we definitely want to make sure that we're
the AME Church as a thing. The AME Church as a thing. We saw the revitalization of Morris Brown College just recently. AME as a thing. It's time to step up and revitalize who you are and your dedication to what the church came to be. I mean, there's also a rich Black history in the AME Church, just why it exists.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I was telling you both before we came on air that on Saturday, I went to the first white coat ceremony, which is a ceremony for incoming medical students. They actually get their white coats that doctors wear, a symbol of, health and professionalism. And the oath that they eventually will take as they become doctors. But this is a predominantly African-American university that grew out of the riots in Los Angeles. And now it is, it has embarked upon educating BIPOC students to become medical doctors. And it's so critical that we have institutions like Charles R. Drew University and other institutions in our community that can not only preserve our history, but also provide opportunities for students. I was so proud to be at that white coat ceremony and to see so many Black students, men and women. And of course, there were other students of color there. So it was just a really great celebration to see Charles Drew opening its own independent medical school and being able to offer a medical degree to students. When we come forward, I want to talk about these body cameras and police unions believing that somehow they should get paid extra simply because they wear body cameras. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're not listening to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings on KBLA Talk 1580, you're missing out. Everybody wants to talk to Tavis.
That's one reason, by the way, why I'm so thrilled to have this conversation with you today. The three people I always most hoped would interview me were Phil Donahue, Studs Terkel, and Tavis Smiley. Donahue's retired, Terkel's deceased, so this is a real thrill for me. And the reason why I have such respect for what you do is you have a historically informed conversation of depth and detail.
Be sure to tune in to Tavis Smiley weekday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon on your unapologetically progressive radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Is the pen mightier than the sword?
They say the pen is mightier than the sword. At KBLA Talk 1580, we not only have a lot to talk about, we have a lot to write about. Politics, relationships, business, empowerment, and culture. The all-star roster at KBLA Talk 1580 has you covered.
That's what it's all about.
Be sure to follow us on all our socials for our latest book releases, op-eds, essays, and commentaries from our hosts. And, of course, download the KBLA 1580 app as we strive to remain your most trusted, credible, and reliable source for the issues you care about. This is unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
What up, baby?
Tell me you're the boy that girl. You are young, gifted, and black.
I'm young, gifted, and black.
And that's a fact.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of Black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of Black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Connection established. Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black. Your black.
In towns and cities across this country, police unions have been asking for pay raises for wearing body cameras. They're seeking to capitalize on this growing public expectation that encounters with the police will be recorded. These unions argue that a pay raise compensates them for the added responsibility and the loss of privacy, they say, that comes from wearing cameras. Now, these pay raises, these requests for pay raises aren't sitting well with lots of folks in the public who thinks that police should wear body cameras as a part of their regular duties and shouldn't be compensated anymore for doing so. What do you make of this, Professor Howard, these police unions saying, look, if you want us to turn a switch on and give up our privacy, we can't say what we used to be able to say, we can't engage in conduct that perhaps we engaged in prior to wearing these cameras, then y'all should pay us for this.
Yeah, this qualifies as the asinine story of the week. I'm sorry. You can't get nothing from me on this, because let's be clear about why body cams were created in the first place. It was to hold police officers accountable for doing their jobs, to not harm people unjustly, to not kill innocent black people and other folks, right? It was to make sure that there weren't like ongoing lies that were so prevalent when we saw these innocent, unarmed people being killed, disproportionately, many of whom were black people. So the whole purpose of body cams was to ensure that you were doing your job and doing your job in a transparent and honest and thoughtful and serving way. So now all of a sudden you want to ask for pay for doing your job. It just doesn't register with me on any level whatsoever. And then, oh, by the way, let me add one other thing. If you were to get to a point where there was going to be pay given for wearing your body cams, then you need to wear that cam at all times. And oh, by the way, when people come around and they take cameras out to make sure you're doing your job, you should never have a conversation with those folks, because one of the things we don't talk about as much is that many everyday law-abiding citizens said that when they do turn on their cell phones to capture police behavior, they're quickly threatened by having their phones taken or told to move from the site. So this one just gets no traction from me, and I think we have to find another way for saying we want to increase police pay.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees that police, firemen, school teachers, there are lots of first responders in our system who don't make the kind of wages that afford them the opportunity to buy a home or to, put their kids through college. And these jobs are dangerous. So I don't think you'd get much debate about police, good constitutional policing and folks that do that kind of police, making a living wage. But Alan, really, should you get paid just because you turn on a camera? That really threw me. And I just want to know, are we missing something?
I think Professor Dr. Howard got it, case closed, with that situation. It is important to understand the reason that some of the police unions have been problems along the way with regards to acting as Klan sort of anti-rally organizations to rally around bad police officers to protect the bad apples instead of putting them out in the open. And this is another such move. No one else who works at a bank or any building where there's a camera on you all day are they saying they deserve more pay. So that's just the funny fictional thing that I think that is sort of funny. And in the world of sort of civil pay, as someone who does substitute teaching, teachers do not make the money that police officers make, and they don't have the opportunities that police officers have. So when you look at that stratification of way people are paid, teachers at the bottom and police officers are at the top, and sometimes maybe firemen are somewhere in the middle. And we've already seen that many cases, many cases, you do not need a police officer. You need a cop or a social worker or some other person to address whatever issues going on, as we have seen in the last couple of weeks of Black children being shot over police, not addressing crime, arresting someone for taking out their garbage. Those type of things are troubling in my soul to say, you need more money for me to understand you're not doing your job. That's really what the problem is. Because if you are, as they say all the time, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, you don't care if a camera's there anyway. That's what they call integrity, doing the right thing when no one's watching. So that sort of tells me that you're sort of acting outside of the needs of what's confined by law, and no, you don't need additional money right now.
Yeah, I think the thing that's kind of disgusting about these unions, and, it's Las Vegas, it's Cincinnati, Seattle, New York City. So these are cities across the country. It's not just one or two cities. They're using this as leverage to get pay raises. So they're threatening the municipalities that they work for, that if they don't get pay raises that they want, then they should be getting paid for these body cameras. So, I don't know how seriously we are to take them, that they really believe that they should be paid for wearing the cameras, as much as we know from some of these stories that this is just, leverage that they're trying to use to get overall pay increases. Real quickly, Professor Howard, we're seeing some very prominent legal scholars, both on the left and the right, coming out saying that Donald Trump should be barred from the presidency because of his actions to overturn the 2020 election. Now, none of these theories have been tested in the court system. There's been no determination by any federal court that the Constitution does bar him. And we know that he hasn't been charged in New York or Georgia with inciting a riot or, causing a riot. But again, I'm going to go to where I started the show as I was scratching my head about a former president having to be admonished to not threaten people. We have legal scholars who generally don't agree on much of anything in agreement that Donald Trump has made himself basically he's no longer qualified to serve. Do you think that, this is, I always ask, is this the beginning perhaps of people starting to see Trump in a different light?
Yeah, I don't know if it is, Areva, but I do think it's interesting that the Constitution will be tried in ways we've never seen it tried before. And as we know that there's so many, and you all are both legal scholars here, there are so many ways to interpret certain aspects of the Constitution. You're talking about the 14th Amendment here. And what we found was that Lawrence Tribe, who is a progressive, he has come out and said that, Trump should be barred because anytime you try to overthrow an election, that automatically disqualifies you. The surprising piece of this is Michael Ludwig, who is a known conservative attorney, agrees with him. And he is part of a growing chorus of conservative attorneys and legal experts who are saying, wait a minute, if you look at the letter of the law, there's some aspects of the Constitution with the 14th Amendment that says anybody who attempts to overthrow, and there's real clear language there that one could easily interpret to say that you can no longer serve in office. I don't think it's going to cause people to jump ship, but I think it gives more legal standing, more legal ground to say that he could be justifiably barred.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And Alan, if we add to that, Mike Pence, who seemingly was starting to speak out against Donald Trump over the weekend when asked if these indictments should be disqualifying, he hemmed and hawed and he danced around the question, but finally said, we should let the people decide. And the fact checkers went to town on that. And they went back and found comments he made about Bill Clinton when Bill Clinton was in office and had his legal trouble. At that time, he said the exact opposite. He said being president isn't just about who can garner the most votes. He said it's about integrity. It's about, having a commitment to the country, having a commitment to, honesty and decency and transparency and all of those things at a higher level than your average citizen. Now, of course, 2 decades later, 3 decades later, when it involves a party member, a Republican Party member, he's saying, let the people decide. And he's conflating the issues. The people don't get to decide if you're guilty of a crime. Now, the 12 people that sit on a jury do, but the 330 million Americans, we don't vote on who committed a crime or not. So it's kind of a stupid response to begin with. But what do you make of this watering down of the standards? So now anybody that can garner votes, even if they're paid for, or, even if people are coerced into voting for them, or if they get the votes through cheating, that somehow that is a legitimate way and the only factor that we should consider in who becomes our president.
I think it's a very difficult thing. If you're a law professor in a classroom, then we know the answer is pretty clear. You would not be able to do it. But in this reality that we live in now, where the stratification of this political world and the arbiter of the Constitution right now is the Supreme Court in the very end, and we know through what lens and vision they see these things, and then they turn the answer back over to what they always say is, let the people decide, and then they gerrymander and keep from voting. So that's the thing that is the comedy of it all. And for Mike Pence, he's a strawless man talking about someone who talked about his wife, said they want to kill him. So for me, he has nothing to say about anything. I don't listen to him at all. I mean, he has nothing to say about anything with regards to integrity or space, and seeing the right thing today means absolutely nothing from him. He has ruined his career for all time. So he go pray on that. But with regards to sort of thinking about how we handle this as a country, this is the problem when we think that law should be determined by the masses of the votes. And as Black people, we know that would not work out for us in many situations. So that's not the way our Constitution, it may have been the way the Constitution was set up, but it's not the way that it works today. The same thing for women. So we really need to take a moment and reflect on these things. But part of the problem is what Lindsey Graham said at the beginning is that Trump would kill the Republican Party. And now there are Republicans trying to get him out of the way and not having blood on their hands by saying, oh, the Constitution prevents it. Someone else does, rather than people standing up and doing what Congress should have done in the first place, which was impeach his behind, and then we would not be having these conversations.
Yeah, and I think Mike Pence, depending on what day or what side of bed he wakes up, he's all over the place, because also on Sunday, he said that he was not aware of any widespread declassification of documents that Donald Trump did when they were in the White House together. And that seems to refute one of Trump's main defenses against the charges in Florida as it relates to the mishandling of classified documents. He said there wasn't any widespread fraud and that Joe Biden was the legitimate president. So depending on the day, Mike Pence, his opinions are all over the place. But I think at the end of the day, as you said, nobody's paying attention to Mike Pence anyhow. I think he's below 5% as it relates to Republican voters. He cannot seem to find a lane. All right, guys, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much, Professor Howard. Always a pleasure to see you. Make sure you check him out on Saturdays at 10 a.m. right here on KBLA Talk 1580 for his show, You Must Learn. Alan is going to stick around for hour 2 because we're going to dig behind some of these big legal headlines and stories involving some of your favorite celebrities and influencers. So stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head. Yeah.
This is a rather bold pronouncement, but we think we can back it up. If you come across a radio frequency anywhere